If you are over 60, your biggest mental battle isn't the future, it's the past. We all get caught in the loop of I should haves and what ifs. Today, I'm going to share the single simple Buddhist question that, according to neuroscience, can end that endless overthinking loop forever. It only takes one word to stop the mental chaos. Stay with me because this wisdom will fundamentally change how you experience the rest of your life. I want you to imagine this. You are sitting in your favorite chair, the one that has molded itself to your body over the years, and suddenly your mind begins replaying old footage. Have you ever felt stuck in the endless loop of I should haves and what ifs? Based on my experience working with hundreds of older friends here in the US, I call this the ego's final battle. Sometime after 60, when the external world quiets down, our ego doesn't easily rest. It makes one last fierce attempt to achieve what the brilliant psychologist Erik Erikson called ego integrity. The ego demands a perfect final draft, a book without mistakes, so it keeps cycling back, trying desperately to edit the script that has already been written. But I want to tell you, true wisdom is not found in achieving that impossible perfection. Peace comes from letting go of the need to control the perfection of the past. Instead, I invite you to do this. Look upon your entire life story, the light and the shadow, the success and the failure, with unconditional compassion, just as you would look upon and accept a dearest friend. Freedom is not the result of creating a perfect final draft. It is the result of accepting the first draft in its entirety. That right there is the very doorway to the stillness I have been seeking for many years. If in the last segment we discussed the ego trying to rewrite history, now I want us to look at the brain that's helping the ego do that. I want to introduce you to the default mode network, DMN. Think of the DMN as a sophisticated problem-solving machine that you trained for 40 or 50 years. It's the area of the brain responsible for mind-wandering imagination and internal dialogues. It's your default setting. When you were working, this machine had clear external anchors: the 9 a.m. meeting, the project deadline, the responsibility of raising children. But after you decide to retire, or once the children move out, suddenly those anchors disappear. Have you ever felt that void? The problem is, this DMN machine doesn't know how to retire. It was trained to constantly seek out and analyze problems. Since there are no real-world problems left, what does it do? It begins to create them itself. It replays a pointless argument from 15 years ago. It worries about a health scenario that will likely never happen. It's running on empty, generating internal chaos simply because that is the only thing it knows how to do. We are not at fault. My brain and your brain are just doing exactly what we taught them. So the key is not to shut that machine down, which is impossible, but to give it a new criterion for operation. That is when we need the question of wisdom. So how do we give that DMN machine a new criterion for operation? The answer, as I've said, is not to try and shut it off. I can't ask you to stop thinking. That's simply impossible. The ultimate goal of all philosophical and spiritual practice is one simple yet profound thing. It is to create a space between a thought that arises and your automatic habitual reaction to that thought. I am always reminded of the words of the great psychiatrist Viktor Frankl. A survivor of the Nazi concentration camps, he taught, between stimulus and response there is a space. In our daily lives, we usually react instantly. The emotion surges, the worry appears, and we act on old instinct. But it is in that precious space Frankl spoke of that our true power resides. It is in there that we gain the power to choose our response instead of merely being a victim of an old habit. And that right there is where our freedom and our growth reside. The one question I shared earlier. Is this thought useful right now? Is not a question meant to end thinking. It is a space-creating tool. It forces the DMN machine to pause, to stop running on autopilot, and to ask, do I truly need to keep expending energy on this? When you can do that, you have stepped into the space of choice, and stillness will begin to blossom. So after we've created that space by pausing our reaction, what is the very next step? That is when we activate the most powerful tool of discernment. I'm not asking you to judge a thought as good or bad or as right or wrong. I'm simply asking one question, and this question must become the gatekeeper of your awareness. Is this thought useful right now? This question is the sharpest tool for distinguishing between two types of thinking we often confuse in life: reflection and rumination. Let's take an example. When you are reflecting, you are seeking a purposeful lesson. Say you are analyzing a past investment mistake to find a principle for prevention in the future. That action leads to insight and can create positive change later. That is useful. But when you are ruminating, you're simply cycling around the same event, feeling regret and self-blame, but without any new information or intention to act. It is a closed loop, a useless emotional trap. Do you see the difference? One side is discerning wisdom that leads to growth. The other is simply noise that leads to exhaustion. That question is the gateway. It forces the thinking machine to choose its direction. So after discerning that a thought is useless, what should we do with it? We need to fundamentally change how we perceive those thoughts. Buddhist philosophy affirmed a truth that modern neuroscience is only beginning to confirm. Thoughts are not facts. They are merely events, transient waves of energy within your mind. I want you to imagine your mind as a vast, endless sky. And what are your thoughts? They are the weather. Sometimes there's light rain, fleeting worry, and sometimes there are fierce storms, rumination. Have you ever felt like you were the storm? Suffering does not come from the presence of the storm. Suffering arises when we identify ourselves with the storm, when we believe I am this anxiety or I am this regret. That is when we are swept away, damaged by our own internal tempest. But through the practice of mindfulness, you and I can choose to become the ski. The sky is never damaged by the storm. It simply witnesses what is happening. When we do that, the rumination of our 60s is no longer a tormenting misery, but just clouds passing by. That is the deepest inner peace. Becoming the sky sounds wonderful philosophically, but how do we practically separate ourselves from the storm in daily life? The answer lies in an ancient practice I call labeling or noting. It's incredibly simple. When a thought appears, you don't need to pursue it, analyze it, or try to push it away. You simply need to identify and name the type of thought it is. For example, if you're thinking, I should have worked harder when I was younger, you simply note mentally, judgment. If you're worried about your children's visit, future anxiety. If you're recalling a happy moment, memory. Modern neuroscience has explained why this simple act is so effective. Research shows that the action of naming an emotion or thought helps reduce activity in the brain's amygdala, which is our fear and emotion center. When you label, you are no longer inside the thought. You are observing it. You have created a cognitive distance. That is the difference between being the storm and just seeing the storm. This tool is the first step toward becoming the true sky of your own mind. Now that we have the labeling tool, we must remember the fundamental nature of the problem we're dealing with. The essence of the mind is constant motion. Ancient Buddhist philosophy described the untended mind as a wild monkey. It leaps incessantly, swinging from branch to branch, never still, always grasping for something. That is its instinct. In the context of our modern later life, that wild monkey turns into a problem-solving machine running on empty. You know, the machine that was used to operating for 40 years. When you retire, you essentially pull all the real fuel, external tasks and goals out of it. But the machine doesn't stop. It keeps running, but with no real input and no useful output. What does it do? It starts generating smoke. It keeps continuously replaying old conversations we had 20 years ago. It worries about scenarios that will never happen in the future. It solves nothing. It just burns through your precious psychological energy. Have you felt exhausted by these thoughts? I see that clearly in so many of my friends. Wisdom is realizing that your mind doesn't always need to work, it needs purposeful rest. If today's reflection resonates with you, you're welcome to support the channel by liking, sharing, or subscribing. Each small action you take is a source of energy that helps me continue creating mindful content for the @Buddha Essence Wisdom community.